Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to take a look at some of the top stories in or from Australia's biggest news site. Now, while it's the biggest news site in Australia, it's also propaganda. It's just shot through with propaganda. It is super pro-globalist, and every globalist talking point is amped up to the max in this particular news outlet. So we're surrounded by white supremacists. Hitler is everywhere. There's racism, white supremacists. There's evil just around. Oppression of women, oppression of black people. Anyone who questions mass migration of peasants is evil and against Hitler. So they came out very, very hard against Donald Trump and pushed and amped up again any hoax and propaganda against him, and they're running protection for Biden, as the other globalist media outlets are in the United States and elsewhere. Some of the best known and highest profile leftist activists, radical feminist issues, radical race issues, that sort of thing, are working at this news outlet. So there's not even the mildest pretense of objectivity. But when they get caught up or called out for this propaganda, they deny, oh, no, we're balanced. No, we're not one side of it. No, we're absolutely balanced, which is, of course, just, I mean, you couldn't even call it a lie. It's just one of the most grotesque countries you can imagine. So let's have a look at some of these stories now. Here's a story about and they've got some photoshopped photograph there that's supposed to be indicative of an event here. But there's a bunch of Islamic teenagers were making a major nuisance of themselves in a shopping centre, riding through the main strip in the shops and that sort of thing, which is patently illegal, and so the security people, rather than call the police, just managed to get them out of the place. So they'd had some sort of incident with a guy there, a white guy, and he complained about it, and as I understand it, they followed him back to his car when he got in and started throwing bottles and other objects at his car. And so he understandably got upset and chased after them. Now in the chase, one of the kids, one of the teenagers, came off his bike and had. Well, they say, I mean, they've again amped up injuries to the pelvis and the ribs. Now, I don't know how bad that actually was, but they're saying that a few weeks after the event, the kid still was having trouble walking. But I don't know how much these people have a very sharp eye on compensation payments. So I don't know about that. But anyway, it ended up going, wait for this case, which is hardly a major case in terms of money or anything. It ended up going to the Supreme Court of that state, the Supreme Court. Now, just to give you an idea, I mean, the filing fees alone, so there's no way these people, there's this family, this Islamic family could have done this, could have afforded it. So taxpayer money, and a lot of it, was made available for them to go to court. They would have been dragged along. They wouldn't have understood how to do this. So white activists using wads of taxpayer money dragged this into the Supreme Court just so they could have a headline case to crow about, just so they could cry out racism, Hitler, yeah, fascist, Nazi, just so they could do that. So I mean, how much taxpayer money, Western taxpayer money, is used for this? Now, so the judge, who I'm assuming is an activist, said that the reason that the guy got upset wasn't because of the run-in he had with the kids in the shopping centre, or the abuse that they hurled at him, or that they threw bottles and whatnot at his car, which would have dented it and scratched it and so on. a relatively new car, I understand. It was none of that. No, not irrelevant. The reason he chased those kids is because he's a damn fucking racist. He's a racist. He's Hitler. He's a fascist. He's a neo-Nazi. Now, the mere idea that I mean, if you look at the pieces that have to go in place, some activist groups got to say, hey, here's a great opportunity. White guy, Islamic kid. So we've got two hits here. We've got an underage kid, or I think he was 17 at the time, 16. We've got an underage kid. We've got a white guy, middle class white guy. We've got an Islamic brown boy. We've got the white guy. Wow, we've got it all here. This is a fucking headline we dream of. We die for headlines like this. Let's go the whole 9 yards on this one. How much money do we need? We'll take it to this court, then the Supreme Court, then we'll take it. We'll spend millions. We'll do whatever we have to do. We're going to get this fucking headline and teach those damn white fascist Nazis a lesson. So someone's actually decided to go the whole 9 yards on this, using a shitload of taxpayer money to do it. Now, a normal person would say, well, here's some kids screaming obscenities at a guy. When they were riding, their bikes and skateboards and whatever through the shopping centre, even those signs everywhere saying "Don't do it." Then they have a run into this guy. He tells them off and don't do it again type. And next thing you know, they're pelting his car with bottles and whatever else, and then yelling further obscenities at him. But all the obscenities they yelled at him, that doesn't matter. Apparently, he said something to them that might have been racist. One word that might have been racist. That's it. That makes him Hitler. But what they said to the white guy doesn't matter. Irrelevant. So now this is a headline. This is on the first page of the news feed. It's a headline. It's a screaming headline. Motivated by racism. Rah. So. The kid is very much dressed up as the victim here. The white guy is Hitler, and that's it. But the mere idea that anyone is going to just quietly sit by while they're abused, and there might have been some shoving. I'm not quite sure on this, and then have their car trashed by some hooligans and not do anything about it. Now, maybe the guy should have just taken photographs of it and gone to the police and got some sort of restitution that way. But it's unlikely it would have gone any. The police probably wouldn't have been interested. But given it's a white boy that can be put in the frame, then any amount of taxpayer money. Now, this particular region or state of Australia has got a very leftist government at the moment that is seriously on the hunt for these sort of headlines. They want this sort of stuff. Racism, we have to do something. White supremacy, misogyny. They're very much into pushing those talking points, which of course are the same as the globalist talking points. So, but anyway, that just gives you an idea of how hard they have to try to get these headlines, the amount of money they have to spend, the effort they have to go to. So, in a sane world, this would never have happened. And I love the Photoshop doctored image on the headlines. They don't say this had nothing to do with the situation, but they, and the language used is very emotive, and they're all trying to the brown kids. Flagrant abuse of the law and basic good behaviour, and that's the thing that's just completely ignored. And then they're 90% plus of the article is putting the shit on the white guy, which is of course how these things play out. So, again, this kid's made out to be the victim. Now the next story, again, this is a headline story, is every year, in fact, multiple times a year, either a regional or a federal government, always left-leaning, has a inquiry into the state of Aboriginal children, or Aborigines generally, but Aboriginal children. Just to give you sort of the wider background to to the Aboriginal situation in Australia, there are there's not even, I think, 0.5% of full-blood Aboriginals in Australia. There's if you count up to, say, 1/16th Aboriginal, then I think you can get up to about 5%. But even an eighth, you would never know. Like a quarter, even a quarter Aboriginal, most times you would never pick it. Maybe slightly swarthy, a bit of slight tan type thing, but you wouldn't get it. But by 16th, you've got about zero chance of working out there's any Aboriginal in the person at all. So we're looking at a very small number of people in terms of full blood. If you take full blood and half blood, it's supposed to be about 2% of the Australian population, but even that's a generous estimate. Now, about between 20 and 30,000 years ago, the oceans are much lower than they are now, and there's a land bridge that went from where southern India would be, and that land bridge went right through, what today's Indonesia, New Guinea, and then into the northern tip of Australia, and which is called Cape York Peninsula. And so people could travel across that land bridge, and so the folks from southern India, those very dark-looking Indians from southern India, moved to or made the trek through to Australia. Then, as the water level started to rise, about 20,000 years ago or thereabouts, the land bridge was covered in water, and that was it. Now, the Aborigines, when they arrived in Australia, were a Stone Age people, and they were still a Stone Age people 20,000 years, 25,000 years later. They hadn't developed technologically or socially or anything in 25,000 years. It's hard to believe and hard to conceive even, but there you go. So they were Stone Age people, didn't even have the wheel. They were probably the most primitive, well, amongst the most primitive, other than, say, the natives of the New Guinea highlands, but they're amongst the most primitive people in the world when Europeans first showed up. So anyway, there've been various sort of there's been numerous policies and very well intentioned among them, misguided also among them, but policies to try and integrate the Aborigines into society. It's gazillion, tens of billions, many tens of billions have been spent, but it hasn't really worked. There's a whole industry about Aboriginal victimhood, as there is with all categories of victimhood now. There's a whole industry, and there's a lot of people, or some people rather, that make a lot of money out of it, and they want the gravy train to keep on going. But these studies or reports or investigations or whatever come out, and they're treasured and loved by the left-wing radicals and by left-wing governments who love to wave it around, and they just restate the same things. I remember amongst the very first articles I ever read in the paper that we had an absolute epidemic of violence against women in Australia, and this would have been getting on for 40 years ago. I think I was maybe just finishing high school, something like that. Maybe a bit more than 40 years. And I looked, and as a kid, I thought, oh, well, if the newspaper says it must be true. And it was an epidemic, and it was, but the exact same articles are being recycled today, and the epidemic, even though billions and billions have been spent on it, continues to get worse. So it just, every year, and for the more social workers and psychologists and activists they put to work on it, the worse the situation allegedly gets. So it's a figment of their imagination, and they love to invent new categories of victimhood. And the same goes with this Aboriginal thing. Now, amongst the various policies is that Aborigines should have self-determination if they want to, because they were a nomadic hunter-gatherer Stone Age people, and some want to continue to live that life. So So they lived in relatively small groups, less than 100, less than 50, that type of thing. Lived in relatively small groups and moved around. Some of it was seasonal, following the food, or where food would be more plentiful, or where there'd be more fish this time of year, and so on. So they moved around and were very nomadic, in fact. And in Aboriginal terms, it's called go walkabout, where they've just had enough where they are and they just walk off. So anyway, these communities that live in the remote rural areas of Australia, when that was encouraged at one stage, so these you better shut the door there. I don't know if it's going to come in. We've just got a bush turkey. He's decided to come on the back balcony, and the balcony door's open, so we're still a bit worried he might come strolling in. And I lost my train of thought. So these Aboriginal groups sort of roam around, but because they're in remote areas, hundreds of miles from the nearest even town, small town, they don't have access to all the facilities that people in a city would. So the activists go out and have a look at the condition of these people wandering around, and they can feel, well, they've got, this one's got some sort of illness, or got some sort of sickness, or has got an eye infection, I've got this, I've got that. So instead of getting them to come to the city for treatment, what they demand is that there should be a fully equipped mobile hospital that follows them around, worth millions upon millions of dollars, follows them around, just so they can have a downtown city lifestyle, even though they're wandering around in the remote wilderness. And so these are the sort of absurdities that we see. But look how they are. Look at that little kid. Look at those flies hanging around that infection that little kid's got in the eye. Well, sure. So the parents should take the kid to a properly appointed medical clinic for treatment. No. You're being a damn racist, you fascist, Nazi, white supremacist. They want self-determination to live as they want to live out in the rural areas. And don't you try and take away Hitler. That's what Hitler would do. So, well, hold on, you can't have it both ways. You can't have this complete independence of wandering around in the middle of nowhere forever, and at the same time have the very best medical care and all sorts of other facilities that people only get in the city, or the bigger towns. And so they want it both ways. So when the Aboriginals are then encouraged to come into, and given free housing and all sorts of things, encouraged to come into a small town that's in travelling distance to say a larger town or a city with medical facilities. When that happens, then the activists say, well, no, you're denying them their cultural heritage. So, well, which is it? So this is the game they play. If the Aborigines are allowed to wander around remote areas, then the outrage is that they haven't got big city facilities at their doorstep, which you wouldn't. You're out in the middle of nowhere, for goodness sakes, nor will they go to the city to get proper treatment. Then if they're brought to within, commuting distance of a city or of a, medical facility, a well-appointed medical facility, kidney machines, the whole thing, then they're being denied their cultural heritage. And one of the downsides of bringing them together in groups is they don't get on too well, and there's a lot of drunken sort of substance abuse and violent behaviour. But that's Whitey's fault. Whitey somehow is causing this. So they treat Aborigines as having zero agency. They have no agency at all. They cannot make a decision for themselves, and any of the misfortunes, self-inflicted misfortunes, are all down to Whitey. So anyway, this report they've done, which was conducted by two very activist, freeloaders on the bandwagon of torrents of taxpayer money. They come out with wholesale changes required, and report finds, and it's breathlessly put up as a headline on this, and very touching photograph of young children and this sort of thing. Now, the issue is that young children are being not cared for, or abandoned, or even mistreated, and also in Aboriginal sort of customs. As soon as a girl menstruates, she's available available for procreation and for intimate relations. And they've got a thing where older men are supposed to show the young girls and older women show the young boys. They've got that sort of thing. It's a bit like the ancient Greek system, I suppose, to some extent there. But that's, of course, frowned upon now, because an older man with a younger woman, that's pedophilia. So these leftist activists are all very keen to play multiple levels here. Well, you want Aboriginal customs. Well, Aboriginal customs, as soon as a girl menstruates, she can have intimate relations with an older man. No, we don't want that part. We don't want that part. Oh, no, we don't want that part. Are you condoning violence against children? Are you condoning pedophilia? You damn fascist Nazi. So, all right then, okay, well, we'll take that part out. But if you take out any other part, you're denying their cultural heritage. So it goes back and forth. I mean, it's just beyond absurd and drives me crazy, because they come out with these stupid reports done by activists which completely ignore the reality. How do you have a fully appointed mobile hospital roaming around the remote areas? You'd need, some of these areas, even a four-wheel drive can't get into it, so you need to airlift everything, and you can't tell them they have to stay to get treatment, so they may decide to leave the next day. So you got to pack everything up and move it again. Can you imagine the logistics? It's absurd. But this is the sort of thing that they effectively demand. These sort of contradictory. Now, with the children not being cared for, they've now decided, the government's now decided, they should intervene and move the children into foster homes or some sort of care, presumably for their safety, and that they get enough to eat, and they're not watching some very unpleasant things that might go on. So that there's because the children are so many of them abandoned or uncared for. Out of the total amount of children in care in Australia, about a third Aboriginal children. Now that's obviously a very high number and way out of proportion to the population. So if you look at the amount of Aboriginal children out of all children in Australia, then you look at the amount of those children that are in foster care. Now, bear in mind that the government is and the authorities here, so we're incredibly reluctant to take Aboriginal children. They'll wait until the abusive situation has gone to a white kid would have been moved long ago. But if the white parents said anything, they'd get the police to heavy them and throw them in prison. But when it's in the Aboriginal communities, there's this, they're terrified to be accused, that they're going to be accused of being racist. So they wait until the 11th hour before they'll do anything, and also the cost of it. Whereas one social worker with a couple of cops can go in and take a white kid, but with the Aboriginal kids, they need a big team to back each other up. So when they go to court, there's half a dozen people are there to give testimony. So there's just not one white guy or something that they can drag across the cut glass. So these are the realities of it. But when you look at the report, not enough money, the system is broken, white supremacy, failing our kids, it has to be transformed, it has to be do better. These kids have a right to their cultural heritage. They have a right to sell it. They have a right. Endless rights. But wait a minute. Don't they have a responsibility to behave well? Don't they have that? No. They have no agency. It's Whitey's caused it. Whitey has to fix it. It's Whitey, Hitler, Nazis. So it's insane just looking at it and the language of supportive. We must support, and we have the self-determination. They have to be connected, and they have to learn stories to pass them on. This is taken away from them, says activists, says super screaming activists. I'm just reading down it here. A culturally safe environment. We have to give wraparound support. We have to give families a voice in this. I mean, what are these things not happening? Of course, they're already happening. So they just invent these things, invent these problems that aren't there, and say, well, if we do this, the problem is solved. But in reality, all they want to do is ride the gravy train of taxpayer money that comes pouring into the pockets of these activists, who, if anything, I think make the situation worse. So just looking at some of these other headline stories here. Bad white man accused of something or other. COVID stories everywhere you look. Homosexual guy who was found dead, must be homophobia. Hitler must have done that too. There's a black woman who was a drug addict. She got depressed because of evil white supremacy and misogyny, but she's come back. You know, wow, what a! I mean, you know, she's just look stunning and brave. What can we say? So koalas are about to go extinct in Australia. That one's also comes up every few weeks, and it's a great money puller for some of the wildlife NGOs, the ones that collect money to support wildlife, but then spend it all on bringing black peasants, black and brown peasants in from the third world into Australia. If only people knew how much their money is. Now here's one here about drug trafficking. These are all brown people, but the way there's nothing. They don't talk about that at all. The way you'd think is middle class white guys have done it all. That's the way you sort of guess from reading the story. But because they don't mention race at all, then you know it's black and brown people. Another evil white man and dramatic arrest. Again, another Hitler there. A woman has stolen quite a lot of money, but it's only because of evil white men around her that caused her to do it. A young child was taken to hospital, and evil white man father's being investigated. All the people around Donald Trump are evil, and they should damn well be taken to the January 6th committee, which, by the way, is a balanced piece of bipartisan judicial practice that is of the highest order. These people are angels, fucking angels, and they should get all those damn Trump fascist Nazis. So one story here, they confess that rent is going up. Rents have gone up. Don't really talk about why or how. Don't mention, the amount of real estate that's owned by a handful of Chinese investors, that sort of thing. They don't talk about that. Instead, it's white supremacy and probably misogyny that's causing it. Hitler again. There's not enough green energy around, and the government should throw more money at it. COVID. Crime is going up because of unemployment. The solution here is simply not to arrest people. That's what it is. Gee whiz. If crime is going up, then what you do is pretend there is no crime, and it'll go down. So And those are the main stories. But again, a leftist. Oh yes, exploitation of black workers in producing white man's clothes. Again, another Hitler story. Gee whiz. I mean, Hitler's omnipresent. I mean, seriously. If that guy had never existed, they'd have had to invent him. So anyway, those are the top stories. That's my take, and I've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.